Welcome. I'm glad that you found my channel. Red beans and rice. That's what we're cooking today. Everybody will agree that red beans and rice is the epitome of New Orleans cuisine. So grab a beer, and when we come back, I'm going to show you how I cook New Orleans red beans and rice. Welcome to First You Have a Beer. There you are. So today we're doing red beans and rice. Here's what you need. You need some red kidney beans that I soaked to soften them up a little bit. You can check on my website on various ways to do it. You don't have to soak them overnight if you don't want to. I use a 3-hour soak. There's quick ways to do it. Check on the website and the red beans and rice recipe, and I go over a few options on how to do that and save some time. We're going to be using the Trinity, yellow onions, celery, bell pepper. We're going to be using some smoked sausage to help flavor it. We use a large amount of garlic and an herb and spice blend that is primarily Le Bon Papa Creole seasoning with some other herbs and spice and some black pepper in there. Now what's not in here is some salt. And we're certainly going to put salt in these beans. We're not going to do that until the end. We'll talk about that as we're cooking. Now, as a seasoning meat, there are a number of options. What I usually use is a smoked ham hock, which imparts a very nice smoky flavor, but you don't get a whole lot of meat out of it. And other options are pickled meat or a ham bone with some ham still left on it, which is kind of hard to come by. You don't always have a smoked or a baked ham that you can use in your beans. But today we're going to use a smoked ham shank, which has been sliced. And what I like about this is that there's a lot of smoky flavor in here, which is going to make the beans taste great. But there's also lots of ham left on these shanks that'll break off into the beans as you're cooking, and it'll be just delicious as can be. Now that we've got everything prepared, I'm going to show you what we need to do to make these delicious red beans and rice. So, how's your beer? Let's get going. Okay, so here's what you do. We're starting out in a Dutch oven over medium to medium-high heat, and we're going to brown the smoked sausage to try to render that fat out and get the fat flavor in the bottom of this pan. And that way, in a few minutes, we'll put the beans in there and we'll move them around in that fat, and hopefully we'll get some of that fat flavor over the beans before we start cooking them. Okay, so it's been 5 or 6 minutes, and the sausage is starting to brown. It's got a nice little brown to it, and you can see the bottom of the pan has got some of the fat that has rendered out of the sausage. So we're going to remove this for now, and then we're going to put the beans in that and the other seasoning, and then we'll come back with the sausage a little bit later. Okay, so we pulled the sausage out of there, and the bottom of the pan has got some of the fat that was rendered from the sausage. So we're going to add the red beans in there. Kind of stir them around a little bit. Try to mix that fat up on those beans. So we stirred that up. Got a little bit of the fat on those beans. Great flavor. Next comes the seasoning meat, the smoked ham shanks. Just going to go right in here. And then we're going to add a couple of bay leaves and some cold water, just enough to cover the beans by just a little bit. Turn the heat up to high, and we're going to bring this to a simmer. Okay, so we're simmering the beans with the ham shanks. It's been about 20 minutes. We're going to let it go an hour, but I'm going to check it out. We're going to give it a stir. It's looking good. Adjust the fire just a little bit, and we're going to keep simmering it for another 40 minutes until an hour has passed. Okay, so this has been simmering for about an hour, It's looking pretty good. You can tell the beans are starting to soften up some, but it doesn't have any seasoning in it. So it's pretty bland right now. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add back this smoked sausage that we seared off earlier. We're gonna add the Trinity. Add the garlic. And we'll put in about a half, 3/4 of the herb and spice blend, which includes the Le Bon Papa Creole seasoning. We'll mix this up real well. Now we'll raise the heat and bring it back to a boil. We added those ingredients in there and it brought the temperature down, stopped boiling. So we'll get this boiling again. Turn it down to a simmer, and we'll let this go uncovered for about 30 minutes. Now, you know, the liquid will start to reduce, the beans will start to thicken a little bit and start their way to being creamy red beans. Okay, so now it's been simmering uncovered for about 30 minutes, and it's definitely getting thicker, getting a little bit creamier. The beans, let's give them a taste. See how they're softening up. They're going to be tasty. They still have a ways to go. And they're still a little bit bland because remember we haven't put any salt in them yet. What we're going to do now, the water is getting kind of low, so we're going to add a little bit more fresh water. Give it a good stir. And we're going to put the lid back on it. And we're going to do this for another 30 minutes. And at that time, then we'll make a judgment on how close they are to being done. But it's totally up to the bean. When the bean's soft, they're done. So we'll be back and check these in 30 minutes. Okay, so now we've been simmering for about 30 minutes with the lid on it. And we're gonna check to see how they are. They're looking pretty good. You can see they've thickened up, getting a little creamier. So right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna taste it. Now remember, we haven't put any salt in there, so we're gonna taste it for seasoning, put some salt in there, make an adjustment on the seasoning if that's what we need, and a determination on how soft the beans are. The beans are getting close to being ready. Definitely need salt. So I'm going to start with about a half a teaspoon of salt. And I hold this to the end because sometimes salt can soften that skin and make them completely mushy. I've got an article on my website about soaking beans, and I cover that in there. We're going to add a little bit more of the seasoning. Give it a stir and we'll test it again. So while we're waiting for that, let me just review. We simmered them for an hour with the cover with the cover on, with the lid on, with just the beans, the ham shanks, and a bay leaf. And then we took that off. We added the seasonings, the Trinity, the smoked sausage, the herb and spice blend, and the garlic. And we let them cook for 30 minutes uncovered. We put the cover back on for another 30 minutes. And that helps the beans cook a little quicker when you keep that cover on there as much as you can. The beans are getting soft. They're not quite there yet. Every time beans are different. Sometimes they take forever and sometimes they cook real quick. These are kind of medium. You can see that those ham shanks are breaking up. You can see these chunks of ham that are in there now, and there's a couple of ham bones in there from those shanks that is really adding to the flavor. So these are going to cook until they're done, which could be anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes or so, but it all depends on the beans. So we're going to let these go a little bit longer with the top up, with the cover off, and then we'll test them and serve them up when they're ready. Okay, so these have been simmering for another 15 or so minutes, finishing up. I'm gonna give them a good stir, and I'm gonna taste them to see if the beans are done or not. Just about right. I think that's about done. And the beans are soft and chewy, but you got a lot of whole beans in there. A lot of people like to mash up their beans to make them creamy. You don't really need to do that if you cook it in the method that I'm showing you today. An hour with the cover on, half hour with the cover off, a half hour with the cover on, and they will get creamy on their own. You take that cover off after that second 30-minute period, and then you just let them cook till they're done the way you want to. That may be 5 minutes, that may be 15 minutes, that may be 30 minutes. It all depends on the bean. But these beans have decided they're ready. Now, the beans are done, and it's time to taste it. This is my favorite part. Yeah, you're right. Those taste good. That's why they call me Sweet Daddy D. See ya.